The mighty Chinese Dragon approaches a U.S. aircraft carrier. Here's how the U.S. Navy would respond. The newest U.S. aircraft carrier, Gerald R. Ford, is confidently cutting through the waters of the South China Sea. Suddenly, its AN Spy-4 long-range radar picks up a signal. A Chinese fighter jet 150 miles away, identified as the Chengdu J-20 Mighty Dragon, a fifth-generation stealth fighter. It's on a direct course towards the carrier. Tensions rise as the aircraft nears, and then, unbelievably, it lands on the carrier's deck. An outrageous, impossible scenario? Maybe. But history has shown us that what seems impossible can sometimes become reality. So what would really happen if a situation like this occurred? A war between the U.S. and China, given the already strained relations? World War III? Stay tuned, we'll break it all down. There are different ways a Chinese fighter jet could end up heading towards a U.S. aircraft carrier, either by accident or on purpose. Let's first consider the accidental scenario. A Chinese fighter jet accidentally flying towards the Gerald R. Ford could happen due to pilot error or a navigational mistake. Not every Chinese pilot is an ace, and even advanced technology can fail. Human error or technical malfunction? Both are entirely possible. In fact, there have been similar incidents in the past that seem just as unbelievable, but actually happened. On October 23, 1966, Soviet Air Force Captain Boris Kapustin and his navigator, Lieutenant Yuri Yanov, took off in a MiG-17 for a training flight near Trigorny. During the flight, the plane's engine failed. The pilots tried to land but had to eject. The pilotless MiG-17 continued westward, eventually entering West German airspace. It flew several hundred kilometers before crashing into a forest, causing no damage on the ground. In another incident, on July 4, 1989, Soviet Lieutenant Colonel Nikolai Skuridin was piloting a MiG-23M from a Polish airbase when, shortly after takeoff, the engine failed. He ejected, believing the plane was about to crash. However, the engine restarted, and the MiG-23 continued on autopilot, flying across Poland, East Germany, and West Germany before finally crashing in Belgium, tragically killing a Belgian teenager. So it's not out of the question that a Chinese pilot could eject from his aircraft and the plane would continue flying toward a U.S. carrier. Now let's consider the deliberate scenario. Take the case of Soviet Captain Viktor Belenko. On September 6, 1976, during what was supposed to be a routine training flight, he diverted his MiG-25 fighter and flew to Japan, where he landed at Hokkaido Airport seeking asylum. Could a Chinese pilot defect in a similar way? It's certainly possible. Another possibility is a Chinese provocation designed to test how the U.S. Navy would react. This scenario is actually the most likely. In any case, if a Chinese fighter jet approached an American aircraft carrier, the U.S. Navy would follow established protocols, including international maritime rules, treaties, and international military instructions. The key document here is the Incidents at Sea Agreement, INCSEA, signed in 1972 between the U.S. and the Soviet Union. It serves as a foundation for agreements between the U.S. and other countries, including China. INCSEA sets rules to prevent incidents between military ships and aircraft in close proximity. For example, military planes shouldn't make aggressive maneuvers, like simulating attacks or flying dangerously low. Another important document is the Code for Unplanned Encounters at Sea, CUES, a 2014 agreement among navies in the Asia-Pacific region, including China. CUES regulates the actions of ships and aircraft during unplanned encounters in international waters and airspace, providing guidelines for communication and collision avoidance. The third key document is the Rules of Engagement, ROE, which outline how U.S. military forces can use force and what precautions must be taken in different situations. While the full text of the ROE is classified, the basic principles are known. The first principle is self-defense. The U.S. military is authorized to use force to protect its personnel if there's an immediate threat. In this case, no one would hesitate to take defensive action if necessary. The second principle is minimizing collateral damage. All actions must minimize harm to civilians and civilian infrastructure. The third principle is proportionality. The use of force should match the level of threat. If a Chinese plane is detected 100 miles from a U.S. carrier, no one's going to shoot it down right away. Only if the plane takes a hostile approach or gets too close would things escalate. Finally, the last principle is escalation control. The use of force should aim to prevent further escalation of conflict. Now let's walk through how the U.S. Navy would respond to an approaching Chinese fighter. First, their radar systems would detect the aircraft at a significant distance. The carrier's fighter jets, likely F-35Cs or F/A-18 Hornets, would be scrambled to intercept the Chinese plane. Their job is to establish visual contact and let the Chinese pilot know they're being watched. They would also assess whether the plane is armed with anti-ship missiles such as the YJ-83K, YJ-12, or YJ-91. The YJ-12 in particular is dangerous due to its 300-mile range and Mach 4 speed. At the same time, the carrier's communication team would attempt to reach the Chinese fighter via international emergency frequencies to determine its intentions. A typical message might be, "Attention crew of the Chinese aircraft. This is the United States Navy aircraft carrier, ship name and number. We are conducting routine operations in international waters in accordance with international law. You are approaching at an unsafe distance. Please state your intentions and change course to avoid a potential incident. We're committed to maintaining peace and stability in this region." The message would be transmitted in both English and Chinese. If the Chinese jet continues its approach and performs aggressive maneuvers, the U.S. military could escalate to the use of force following the row. This might involve firing warning shots or, in extreme cases, engaging the aircraft. In the aftermath of any such event, the crew would file a report to higher command for analysis and evaluation. It's important to note that the U.S. military's response would depend on the situation's specific circumstances, how close the Chinese aircraft is, how fast it's moving, and the broader political context. In a highly tense region, the U.S. might act more quickly and decisively. All this leads to one conclusion: a Chinese fighter jet would never land on a U.S. aircraft carrier. Any attempt to do so would be met with force. You might recall an incident from July 1970 when a Soviet helicopter landed on the deck of the American cruiser USS Belknap in the Black Sea. The American crew was shocked and prepared for the worst, but the Soviet crew explained they had technical problems and needed to land. The situation was peacefully resolved, but that was in a different era, during the Cold War, when diplomatic relations were far more cautious. Today, the stakes are much higher and tensions are more intense. Back in 2014, the U.S. didn't shoot down a Russian Su-24 bomber that was performing aggressive low-altitude maneuvers near the destroyer USS Donald Cook. If the same thing happened today, that plane would likely be destroyed. Some may argue that shooting down a Chinese plane could be seen as a casus belli, or cause for war, sparking World War III, but it wouldn't. It might lead to sanctions or an increase in proxy conflicts, but a full-scale war is unlikely. Even in 2021, when a British destroyer, HMS Defender, sailed near Crimea, which Russia had annexed in 2014, Russian forces fired warning shots, but nothing escalated into a larger conflict. As Putin himself noted, even if a shot had hit the ship, it wouldn't have led to war. Modern-day conflicts aren't triggered by individual incidents like this. So in the event of a provocation, the U.S. military will respond decisively. If they fail to do so, they risk losing credibility. After all, if the USS Donald Cook had shot down that Russian Su-24 in 2014, maybe Putin wouldn't have felt so emboldened to invade Ukraine later. History shows that hesitation in the face of provocation can have lasting consequences. What do you think? How would China respond if a U.S. aircraft carrier shot down one of its jets? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more. See you in the next video.